Welcome to the Cracking the Growth Code podcast. I'm your host, Matt Zembruski, and pleased to have as my guest today, Colin Robinson. Colin's a senior consultant working in Seattle's big tech landscape over the last 25 years, wearing every hat imaginable from engineering and architectures of data centers and cloud computing to project and program management, security and software engineering, and now continuous software development using Agile frameworks and practices. Colin enjoys mentoring and coaching, is a contributing author to several books, loves being a dad and traveling the world with his family. Colin, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks. I'll do a clap for myself. Thanks for having me.
We got to cue the claps in the background. No, but great to have you here, Colin. Looking forward to hearing you share your perspectives on growth and just things that you see out there for trends, obstacles, opportunities, etc. In the workplace today, with your experience and so forth. So let's hop right in. I got a number of questions, and we'll make this as conversational and informal as we go through this.
Sounds good.
So, as a leader in companies with teams, etc., and an agile professional, how would you describe sustainable growth as it relates to companies today?
Yeah, it's something that all of us struggle to define properly. I would say the biggest thing with sustainable growth, and I'm speaking probably very currently in 2023, is making sure that you balance it and that you're not relying too heavily on one project or relying too heavily on one client or a set of customers. Because when those clients and customers make their own choices that you don't control, then your market vaporizes. So we've experienced this year having like too many of our resources with one client, and as that client has had to reduce their headcount, it didn't just affect all those people, but it affected our bottom line as well, because now the sustainability that we could see on the way up, we didn't really come up with as many mitigation plans of when that plateaued and how to reduce that as things changed, and we know things are going to change. So so sustainable growth to me is recognizing that things are going to change and that we should do better than just having hiring and layoff booms. We should be trying to find a way to be a little bit more lean and a little bit more just in time. Also try to do more with less, and also look for ways to use people as markets shift. You, instead of cutting free great people you've already landed, look for ways to repurpose those people, even if it's just temporarily while you wait for the market to shift.
Yeah, that balance and that customer mix and sort of the as you're talking about the ability for your teams, your staff, the employees and contractors, et cetera, at the company to be able to adapt and go through it. I'm curious, I know you have a good amount of Agile in your background and your work history. Have you found that some of the Agile frameworks, mindset, lean mindset, things like that have been helpful in adapting to those changes for sustainable growth and so forth?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, it's why for years we were hearing the term like change mindset, right? And I love it from an Agile perspective. I want the Agile mindset, which isn't that I'm trying to change, but that I'm trying to recognize the conditions, balance them, sort order or prioritize them, and then do my best to make the best choice today. And guess what? Tomorrow I get to wake up and I get to do all the same things again, because I love how many mistakes I make, because I get to remake better ones tomorrow. And the change mindset assumes that what you were doing was wrong and that you have to change to be something else. And then when you discover something else is wrong, you have to change to be something else. I'd like to think that I have a whole bunch of me's and I need to be agile to shift to support that when I need it. And companies kind of need to do that as well. And the more agile the company is, the more nimble they are, then they're able to do that. And the others have lay off 5,000 people at once.
Yeah, and then it all comes back, right? Then they go try to hire 5,000 people back 6 months or 9 months or 12 months later.
Yeah, and even like while they're laying off, they're likely hiring. It's an interesting. There's that internal hiring, the quiet hiring has become popular, where it's like, well, we stripped it down, but we can't stop business, so we're going to do some mitigation hiring while we figure out what's next. I think there's some healthy things to that. I read in Musk has a new book out, autobiography, and he talks about, you strip back 100% and then you put back 10% that you got wrong about the strip back, right? You realize immediately, if you aren't putting 10% back, that probably aren't doing things right, because we all do things wrong. We got a few things wrong and go, wait a minute, I needed Colin, I needed Bob, I needed whoever. And then you figure that out, or if it's not a person, it's a role. But then when you build back, hopefully you're building back more sustainably and really looking for ways to justify each and every step of growth you're doing, not growth for growth's sake. It should have other metrics and other OKRs and KPIs, but really just other things that aren't just growth for growth. How about valuable growth? And how about growth that your customers really value, as opposed to just more? More oranges isn't better, but more tasty, sweet oranges is better. So it's like you got to figure out like what more and what growth you're actually looking for. Bigger isn't always better. More isn't always better. Have other metrics.
Yeah, that's fantastic. The other metrics and measure what matters, we hear a lot in the industry, right? And that's really that gets me to thinking what you just shared as to how strong and transparent the feedback loops are, how frequent and transparent the feedback loops are with your actual customers that you're delivering value to, right? You mentioned about the customer mix, and if you reduce the amount that you're able to give to one customer, maybe because they go away, you bring new customers on. How are you able to? Have you found that transparency and having those fast feedback loops with the customer and being able to communicate that all the way through the organization? Have you found good ways to do that with Agile frameworks or in general? Is that part of what you're talking about with measuring the important things that you want to grow with?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that's my job, and it's the hardest part about the job, right? It's educating people. And who the easiest person to convince about agility is the customer. If you show a customer a product that sucks and then show them 3 more that are better, they are happy to jump right off of what they had into something else. And if Apple ships their new device this week and then a month later says, for all of you that bought one last month, we've got a new one and you can just get a new one for free, come bring it to us. Customers will agilely hop to the new thing as you want. So the problem is convincing the ship to turn, and these ships get very big. And even in small organizations, they tend to grow and grow and grow, and growth is good, and growth is what brought us in and made our salaries go up. But growth also is what makes it hard to shift. It's also where you build dependencies that you can't really manage. And you end up getting to a scale where your growth becomes almost like a cost center. You're like, it's costing you throughput, it's costing you value, it's costing you sales. And you're doing more, but you're not doing more with less, you're doing more with more. And so over time, that's where agility helps you figure out like, okay, we've been getting it wrong for a long time. And if we want to do an agile transformation to the whole business, I personally think that's a mistake. I actually think what you do is you strip back things and say, team one, how much dependencies, how much interaction with other, oh, you don't have anything? Great. We're going to leave you alone. You're going to keep moving. Your little sailboat, your little rowboat is doing just fine. But then I'm going to get a bunch of people that are like, no, these features are too big to deliver on one team. How can I better improve on that? And that's when we look at the different ways we scale a business and scale the frameworks that I use to sort of address the need a little bit better. And I'm convinced part of why companies get most of these agile and business transformations wrong is they, for some reason, think it has to be January 1, we start for everybody in the company and we all have to switch the bit immediately. And there can't be any stumbles along the way. Pilot programs work. Getting feedback, inspect and adapt, all these great things that we love about agility. You should be able to say, hey, we have 100 teams this year. I think our goal would not be to convert all 100. Our goal is to evaluate all 100, but move forward with 1, 2, 10, or 20 of them. And when we can have like an established success criteria, then we go back to the business and also ramp it up, ask for more money, do it the right way. But the evidence should be there that we're making progress, and the frameworks are not why we're here. I do not sell any Scrum. I don't sell Kanban. I might sell it from my own, personal check, but I don't sell it for what I deliver on the job. So, these are challenges. I think we do benefit from agility, and I even say all businesses benefit from agility. I'll quote this 1,000 times, which is you don't build the Burj Khalifa starting with the 101st floor. but I can still do agility. I can still have lean practices, just in time building. I might be able to build in a modular way, in a repeatable way, in an improvable way. And so all businesses, I'm a PMP as well. So I have a history in traditional projects, and those things still exist, and I still see value in those. I just love agility, and that's why I love software teams that are using the different frameworks that I push and support.
Yeah, that's fantastic. You mentioned a lot in there. There's a lot to unpack. I want to hit on one item that you talked about. Success criteria and establishing success criteria. And it sounds like what you were saying is you want to have different success criteria, different stages in the company's growth, right? In the beginning, maybe you're just building that first level, but you have the vision for the whole skyscraper, right? And as you start going and you're expanding your teams and construction, whatever you're doing, right, then your success criteria could change, right? So that way you're not hitting a growth plateau and you're sort of leveling out and you're just looking at things still from the beginner's mindset, but you're more from a new place, a new mindset. So talk about success criteria for a moment, Colin. What you've seen work well, like with your situation today, or maybe in the industry in general. What do you think is good success criteria? You mentioned about making sure that it's important that you're adding value to your customers, right? Like how do you measure success? A couple success criteria that you've found useful.
Sure. I mean, in the world of software engineering, I mean, we obviously love using the OKRs and KPIs and having acronyms to try to sell an idea, but that idea only matters if we can all like envision it the same way. And so again, as a scrum technique and as an agilist, one of the things I push that should be from the bottom to the top, and I think there should be multiple ones of these, are team agreements, working agreements. So whether it's just my team of developers, or whether it's a scrum of scrums of my peers, or whether it's a bunch of senior leaders that are arguing about how we're going to spend a few $1 million, I think there needs to be a working agreement. What are we here to achieve? It's more than an agenda, by the way. It's like when I speak to you, it may be, I may push back, we may argue, we may raise our voice, but we are coming together for the purpose of delivering something. And then once we can agree on that, then we work on deciding what the something is. But I'm always the person that says, we don't know if we're successful unless we've decided before we start what that's going to look like when we're done. Is it going to be the number of customers that sign up in the first week or the first day? Is it the total revenue by the third month? Is there something that we're going to use to measure it? And then along the way, without getting too measurement heavy, what are we going to do to make sure we're on track to that? And I'll give an example. I have actually come up with an Agile personal finance game that I created with my wife. And it includes having 5-year goals that are really like, just like hey, these are our dreams. You have like a 1-year vision, which is like, this is our spending plan for this year. And then you have quarterly sort of synchronization. Like basically it's just a one question, like, are we on track to our spending goals? You don't want to wait till you're in month 12 to do all your spending, right? You also don't want to spend it all in month 1. So you have these quarterly checkpoints that you have to sort of say, where am I? And then every month you do a bill pay and you make sure all the monthly bills are paid and have a nice adult beverage and just say like, life is good. And once a year, you update your 1- and 5-year plans, right? And so businesses should be just as simple. I shouldn't have to explain to a person running a Fortune 500 that businesses should be just as simple, but I do. They all think, no, we are the different ones because we're so complex. And because you wouldn't understand because you've never been a CEO of a wireless company. And I'm like, absolutely not. I've not signed up for that particular thing. However, I am here to be like a constant improvement specialist. And I can see poorly designed processes, whether I'm at the stadium in line for nachos, wondering why it's taking so long, or whether I'm talking to a senior leader. And I've had the pleasure of working with some of the greatest leaders in the world. I worked for Bill Gates in a couple different companies, and I don't just name drop him for name drop purposes, but to really be in a room of people that are so excellent that they're sitting there in a room with Bill Gates and are able to speak as peers, to push back both ways and have that work in agreement that at the end of it, we know what we're building, we know how we're going to move forward, and no matter what we trip on, we're going to get there together. And companies that can do that are successful, and built a few of those. So
that's fantastic. So it sounds like you're talking about the team working agreement, but also the example you used about personal finance, I think, is fantastic, very practical, right? Where in that example, you're the product owner, the scrum master, and the customer at that point, right? You're also receiving the value when you guys go and toast your adult beverage at the end of it. You're receiving the benefits because you said, hey, we saved up this much, we're ready for our next trip or our vacation or whatever, home improvement, things like that. And that's a good example. I'm curious how in growing companies, like you mentioned, Fortune 500 companies, some of like Bill Gates firms and things like this, he seems like he would be a person that would really, and I have never worked for a Bill Gates company, but to me, he seems like a very obviously intelligent individual. And he seems to me like he would be intelligent from an agile growth mindset perspective, in that he would welcome the culture moving toward more of a growth mindset and having more of those open conversations like you're talking about in the room with the leaders and the executive team. Let's talk about what KPIs and OKRs really matter for us this quarter, not just to our stockholders, not just to bump the number up on the ticker tape, but like what really matters, what's making a difference for our overall company mission and so forth. Did you find that in some of the ethos of those conversations and meetings?
Yeah. And especially, again, as far as like a growth perspective, one thing that we all should do more of, and he really got me to think about this 20 years ago, is you've got to be looking to grow like yourself, your org, and the company sort of always at once. It's really hard to do. It's kind of, we're asking people to spin a lot of plates, but it's the way we grow a career in big tech. And so you've got to be thinking about what your role is, my bug or my meeting I'm running or my workshop or whatever, but you've got to roll that up in some way to deliver it, so it's serving sort of multiple masters, right? Like you want it to be off your list because it's your work, but you also want to make sure your team is delivering a number of quality. And so Bill was just one of those people that, like, you were speaking to the CEO, but you were also speaking effectively to our lead developer, right? And he didn't code at that point, but he was also somebody that was able to like hear the elevator pitch and in a matter of seconds already have better questions for you than you have for, because his thought is, here's all the things that just hopped in my mind, and I'm going to throw them back at you. And now those of us that thrived and survived, we were ready for that because our thoughts did go into where we knew Bill would want us to go. And we were going to have design aspects. We were going to have mitigation plans and risk reductions. But also we were going to say, along the way, we'll know we're there because our goal is to have X number of lines of code be automated so that we're not constantly having to fix X, Y, or Z. We're going to reduce our bug counts below this number. And when we hit this threshold is when we launch into this thing. So they tie OKRs and KPIs almost as like, I hate to use the word gating, but like something where you're like, I want to know that we've hit a threshold before we all agree that we're moving on to the next thing. And again, there's a hybrid reason to be between Agile and Waterfall. There's a time when we move fast, and I think there's a time when we move slow. And for us Agilists, that's hard to hear sometimes, but also companies are telling us now that we've experimented with Agile. We love it, but we also need to know when we need to pump the brakes and really know whether we're measuring the right things and whether we're adapting accordingly.
Exactly. And it sounds like with all that, whether you're measuring the right things, adapting accordingly, and so forth, sounds like, and as you mentioned, like Bill being in the room or another senior executive, as you're there having a conversation, seems like active listening is a really good skill for everybody in the room to have. It sounds like Bill is very good at active listening, to be able to hear what's being said, process it real time, and then feed back really good questions, to the room, and get everybody to have a really good open conversation on their feet. So I just
he's one of two CEOs I've interacted with that had literally a physical difference between how their eyes almost fluttered. And wow. I almost felt I could see him having another CEO level event in his head. He's planning his next whatever while having a very in the moment, active listening moment with us. And the other one was Suja Patel, who is famous for real networks and FreeBSD and things. But people who really are functioning, their minds work in a way that mine wasn't blessed with. But it's a pleasure to be with people that can like really so actively pivot. And I mean, it's an agile brain. It's really somebody who's in the moment, and that's something that's really, really powerful.
No, that's fantastic. That's really cool. These are amazing insights you're sharing, Colin. I really appreciate it. And the theme is growth. We're talking about a lot of aspects of it with the the conversations and the metrics and the the listening and the and so forth that go with it. As we wind down, I want to I created a fast 5 questions.
Okay.
They're all about the industry, so it's sort of like, and there's no one right answer. It's like, what do you prefer, like blue or red, favorite color? It's that type of thing. There's no, but I'd like to get your take on it. Some of it relates to what we talked about, some of it doesn't. But to wrap things up, I'd like to hear your answer. I'll give you an A or B choice, and just let me know what you think is most important for growth, or maybe just what you think is most important for you in the industry.
Sure.
And then I have one more question to wrap up after that. So for the Fast 5, what do you think is most important to help the organization, or again, the industry, attracting talent or retaining talent?
Retaining talent. Do you want me to elaborate, or you just want me to answer?
Well, we'll just go fast through them, and then we'll. But no, it's good. It's
okay.
Good. Hybrid work or remote work?
I think hybrid work.
Grow now or grow later?
Grow later.
More focus or more fun?
More focus.
Clarify the vision or optimize execution?
Clarify the vision.
Fantastic. Those are great answers. Excellent answers. The question I have doesn't relate necessarily to elaborating on that, but it could. It's you talked about some good examples of living it and breathing it, the growth mindset, agile mindset, et cetera, with you and your family, and the way you approach life. It's not just, I turn it on for work and I turn it off when I go home. What's a personal a personal habit or some type of personal routine that you found works well for you, and it helps give you more ability to execute in the corporate world?
Well, I'll use an agile one. You can see behind me. I'm not sure if anyone will have the camera vision of this, but I have Kanban boards in my life. And for folks that don't know what those are, they're basically a prioritization board, but also it's a visual board. It's something I can see. And right now I run 3. I've learned that 3 is too many, but 3 is the number, because I have sort of a me board, me and my career. I have a family board that my wife and I do stuff. And then I have sort of like a house to-do list. You could think I could merge them, but for reasons I won't go into, I don't. But what I find is, number one, I have a 5-year-old. I was able to teach him the understanding of prioritizing work and understanding what we wanted to use our time for today, and why some other things may be down the board. But also I can collaborate with my family because I have this board, and I'm neurodiverse. And so having things out of sight and out of mind isn't great. And having everything on my device doesn't solve all my problems. So having a board that's physical, that I can, like I have a stack of stickies next to me, I can write things down before I forget them. I can have them on the board. I can prioritize them and get them done. That's one of the techniques that works both personally and professionally.
That's a fantastic example. I do a lot of that as well, Colin. I don't have 3 organized boards, but I've been in and out of that before. So that's a great suggestion. Thank you so much for that. And we'll wind up in the interest of time. Thank you so much for being on the Cracking the Growth Code podcast today, Colin. Really appreciate your time, expertise, wisdom, your great stories that you've shared across your various experience in different companies and so forth. It's really valuable. I found that one thing that really helps is sharing across the industry. There's a lot of unique situations that happen, company to company, place to place, country to country, state to state. So as we share and collaborate, we share expertise and best practices. I found that to be, our audiences really crave that and wanted more of that. So I appreciate you sharing everything today. And thank you so much for your time, Colin.
Thanks so much. Look forward to talking to you again.